ISACA Abuja Chapter warmly welcomes you to her 13th Annual Conference, ANCON 2021, taking place from the 4th to the 7th of October. Our theme this year is Building Infrastructural Resilience, the post-COVID-19 era. Over the next 4 days, you will connect with industry thought leaders, improve your knowledge, and grow your network. Join us online daily from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. For more information, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and our website www.isacaabuja.org. ISACA, advancing IT, audit, governance, risk, privacy, and cybersecurity.
All right. Technology not being gender biased is something that when you say it, it makes people think, because I don't think anybody ever thinks of technology in terms of gender bias. So it would be helpful to hear your views. Is this something that you hold? What do you think about technology and gender bias? We're not talking about presence of women in technology leadership position this time, but technology itself. Is there any bias towards any particular gender? What are your thoughts?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think technology is not necessarily gender biased at perhaps the infrastructure level, but when you get to the application level and the spheres in which technology is applied in our daily lives, I do think there's probably some inherent bias because the majority of the developers are male. There's just greater male representation in conceiving and conceptualizing the ideas. So I think the female perspective is not necessarily taken into consideration. And then in societies where there is considerable difference in terms of the opportunities available to male and females, I think technology further compounds that. But I'd like to hear what Tabitha thinks about that too. And since she's on the make side, more of the make side of technology, we're a service provider, maybe she can, maybe I'm totally wrong.
No, I think your response was spot on. I agree. I think at a fundamental level, there is no bias. But I think as the industry has developed, as the marketing and the expertise has evolved over time, unfortunately, in its inception, the technology and the use of technology has been geared more towards males. And I don't think that that was initially intended to be the case. I think that naturally computers and technology have evolved from mathematics and physics, which has historically been predominantly contributed to by males. And so what's happened over time is that these careers have been geared towards males because it has been predominantly filled by males. And I think now we're starting to see that bias more clearly and understanding what we're losing by missing 50% of the population. I think particularly in gaming was the original, or was one of the first areas to really notice that, because when women were starting to develop games, the consumption of those games, the selling of those games significantly increased. And so there was a revenue opportunity. And so organizations started to focus on this a little bit more. And then more broadly, we're starting to see a real inclusion or a real understanding that the diversity of thinking and the marketing, the revenue, the okay, was there anything that you wanted to add into that? If we think about where it has started, the bias in technology and where we are today, From my perspective, I think one of the fundamental ways to address these is to, one, make sure that at the level of education, at the grassroots level, we are promoting these types of careers to both men or both boys and girls equally, and that we aren't creating that systemic bias right from the beginning of education.
Yes, thank you very much for your views, both Tabitha and Funke. It's interesting because the discussion usually tends to go towards opportunities in technology for women. And like last speaker just said, the best way to address that is to start from the grassroots, the exposure to technology education, and perhaps where there is some skewing in favor of one gender, then perhaps there should be policies in place to correct the skewing by making more opportunities available for the other gender to join in. Now, one of the very interesting aspects of this noticeable by evidence, but hardly noticeable bias, I found was when there was this publication of a report about iPhone when it came out, was very popular, one of the first uses of touchscreen in mobile phones. And then they ran into a problem because they found out it was designed by men for men, and women had difficulties using the touchscreen. And it's interesting what you say, that women constitute 50% of the world, roughly speaking. So for most businesses, businesses that are not gender directed, that means you're talking about 50% of your potential market space. So if we want to take off from where you said opportunities in education, okay, Bamidele is with us now. I'm very relieved to hand over to you, because I think you know exactly how you want to drive this fireside chat that we've been so looking forward to. Thank you.
I feel outnumbered, but I also feel safe. So thank you so much. Thank you very much, Funke. Thank you very much, Tabitha, for joining. Nsuki, thank you so much, Glory. We've had an interesting time having conversations on different areas of security with ISACA, and this one is a bit different. It's not security, it's more of technology. And so I have the pleasure of having two people here with me to support me. And that's really because of a lot of the conversations on technology are real facts that I would say are not so pleasant, especially when it comes to the gender divide. So I'm very keen on hearing, not just for me, but for every woman out there, everyone in technology, everyone starting the journey, from both of them, from both of you, on how the problems when it comes to the gap in technology has evolved. I'm very much aware, and by looking at some of the existing reports on gender equality and parity, the problem itself appears to have evolved. There has always been an issue with equality, which shows the lack of representation of one gender when it comes to technology. There has also been a period where we're dealing with parity. So yes, there is representation, but how do you find yourselves in a situation where the effort is not rewarded through bias? So for example, same efforts being put in by men and women, and then women are on the lower side of the balance when it comes to reward for efforts. That has also been a problem that exists. And then the last part is how do we level out the playing ground? How do you have everyone treated fairly, equally, considering what we're doing, what's happening with technology now doesn't require manpower. It really requires brain power, creative minds. And I can attest, in my journey in technology, there has been a lot of influence from women leaders, from team leads, from managers who have been women. And even this meeting is a demonstration of that, of women who are role models and have broken those barriers when it comes to technology. So I think it would be great to start from do something interesting in Microsoft. And thanks to Tabitha, who I've worked closely with in the past 1 year. It is tailored towards cybersecurity, but it's rare to find so many women in that field, and the stats show there are few women in that field. So if if you can share with, I would say share with everyone, not just me, but share with people what exactly, how has your journey been, and the challenges, the areas where you have broken through, having that strength in minority, for example, and some of the things you could leave behind for ladies, for women who are also treading that similar path.
The big question, Bamidele. So I think I'll have to go very far back in time. I think the pivotal moment for me was actually in high school, which is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about education. I attended an underprivileged high school, and there was a lot of crime and drug use and so forth. And the teachers were very dedicated, but didn't have a lot of resources to work with. And I remember my math teacher took an interest in me, which I'm not really quite sure as to why, because I was terrible at math. But I was quite good at computing. I had access to a computer. It was very rare at that time. And I had access to a computer because my father was a bit of a tinkerer. And so I knew a little bit more about computers than, say, my classmates. And so this math teacher took me under his wing, and he created an advanced computer course. He got boys from an older year who were also interested, and created a class, and he could justify allocating the resources because he had the numbers. And really that was pivotal for me, because at that point I hadn't really considered anything beyond high school other than getting a job to support the family, maybe an administrative assistant. But after this teacher had fostered this interest in me and this spark, I went on, I was encouraged to go to university and ended up starting a career in computer science, cybersecurity, and so forth. And what really has helped me progress through the career is not necessarily how hard I've worked, though I have worked hard, and there are instances where I've needed to work harder than my male peers to demonstrate my capabilities. But really what's helped me is identifying mentors and allies who are able to support me in a similar way that my math teacher did when I was at school, is explain or describe what's possible, and then being able to support or advocate for me as I've gone through the ranks. And what that has motivated me to do today is to pay that forward, to be that ally for younger people coming up through the ranks in computer science, in cybersecurity, particularly the younger girls, but also people from other underrepresented communities, whether they be underprivileged, or perhaps it's veterans, or it might even be recently we've been moving into single mothers who are trying to get back into work. And so I've really applied that in my career going forward, and throughout my career, is one, being able to be that ally, to be that support for people coming up, and also seeking allies for myself and my career as well, to be able to understand what that next step looks like.
Thank you, that's great. And okay, you picked something else, which you kind of minimized something which I'm sure a lot of people in your history, your work history, your career would not agree with. You said it's not really about the hard work. I think hard work always shows itself one way or the other. So thank you so much for that, Tabitha. So one other area, and this is an area that I would say touches on the growing trend today, and that's accessibility. So accessible education, accessible technology. The main driver with that area has been the internet. So we all know the internet has two sides. There is the side that's of benefits, and there's the side where there could be a lot of noise, but it doesn't change the fact that the internet is accessible. And I think it would be fair to say, when we listen to Funke Opeke's profile, it would be fair to say the evolution of the internet, especially in Nigeria and in Africa, has accelerated knowledge, has accelerated exposure to not just what's happening out there, but how applicable creative minds can apply. It has been an interesting journey when it comes from the end of consumers. For example, I just tried to join the meeting and I had issues with internet. I wouldn't go into how I went past that issue. But Funke, if we could hear from you, especially from the mind of technology, internet, the breakthrough of what we've seen over the years, and how internet itself can help accelerate that journey for, I would say, tomorrow's tech leaders, tomorrow's women tech leaders.
Okay, thank you, Bamidele. And yes, indeed, internet access is something that we've watched, and I guess we've also played an instrumental role in growing in our region of the world from probably lower than 10% penetration to 40 to 50% today across West Africa, depending on what specific country you're looking at. However, this is not a platform to discuss technology, and I would acknowledge that even with the degree of penetration that has been achieved, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of the quality of access, the speed of access, and also the cost and affordability of that access for many in the region. So while people might have access, the utility of that access and the impact of that access in terms of daily life for a lot of the population is still very much constrained. Now, how does that particularly affect women or the female gender? Well, if something is expensive in our region and not as affordable, then women who tend to have lower income levels and lower educational levels than men are automatically disadvantaged. And so when we're talking about something like internet access that actually enables opportunity, learning, access to healthcare, access to certain social services, women being disadvantaged either because of affordability. And when we talk about affordability of access, we're not just talking about the internet service, we're also talking about device affordability, smart device affordability. Then clearly, women, and all the statistics show that women are clearly at a disadvantage. I think just like Tabitha said, for a lot of women in tech and how you break down that barrier actually also starts from a young age, either high school or elementary school, and women gaining access to STEM and having quality STEM education, and developing an interest in seeing the possibilities of those kinds of careers. When schools don't have internet access, not to talk about good internet access, or computer labs, or those things are constrained, then again, women are disadvantaged because they're less likely to have access, or young girls, to those opportunities and to consider or even contemplate careers in technology. So I think those are the real issues. I don't think you can separate the issues of access to technology from other gender issues that we have in our society. You need to get better access to schools, but you also need to get more girls into schools, and you need to ensure that the quality of education that they are receiving is good. So that's at the gender level. Of course, at a fundamental level is the reality you just experienced and we experience every day in our region, that a lot more still needs to be done at the infrastructure level to improve the quality of access and lower the cost of access, so that more people, more citizens, clearly more women, as affordability gets better, will participate. Also, when you get it into schools, you're getting it into families, homes. Mothers tend to be strongly influenced by their children and vice versa. So as these women gain access, children would help with digital literacy. Literacy is also an issue. Then we could start working on closing the gender gap.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You touched something very interesting, which is STEM. STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths, is a field I not only find relevant for today and tomorrow, but also very applicable to, I would say, the bright minds of today. And it's interesting. I was going through a report. It's a report by McKinsey and Microsoft on what's called the class of 2030. The whole idea of that report is, by the time kids below 7 years today, by 2030, when they are graduating, they will need certain set of skills for them to not just survive, thrive, but to also stand out. And a lot of those skills today, they are lacking in the traditional school curriculum. And that's where STEM helps to fill that gap. Skills such as problem solving, social emotional skills, how to interact with people, build relationships, self-recognition, building esteem, and finding themselves on the same level with peers, regardless of the gender. So STEM is something I'm for it, and I'm currently going through a course that gives me more education on STEM. So thanks for that. There will hardly be any STEM without the internet. So that's something that's very important. Thank you very much. I have a few ideas, in taking some of my notes, and I want to bounce these ideas out to yourself, Funke and Tabitha, to see if you could qualify some of this. And it comes down to, how could we make a differentiator, especially with gender and technology? So you mentioned one thing, which is STEM and being able to adopt technology. There are also the opportunities that come with skilling. I believe skilling is a process that should be continuous. So learning new things, skilling, improving oneself, and not just seeing certain areas, like in this case, technology, as being one-sided towards technology. The other interpersonal side, which I kind of find relevant to life itself, but this time, if we say, let's focus on how women can do it, is bringing both of you to this forum where you are mentors to a lot of people, and not everyone has direct access to you. So they would probably go into things like following your profiles, watching out for your path so they could follow in the same footsteps, with the hope of getting to almost the same level at which you have achieved. I call it shadow mentoring, where you could use tech profiles to drive your own path. But there's a personal side, which is there has to be the interest. There's got to be the relevance. So one wouldn't go into an area of technology that's not relevant for tomorrow. It has to be something relevant and applicable. And then the last part is the intention. How much effort will be put into trying to achieve a certain objective. And for me, all of these things, they kind of come into how people, and in this case, how women could actually bring it up to challenging. Having equal opportunities also definitely comes into that. But in bouncing some of these ideas, is that enough? Is there more that should be done? Yes, there is government support that's needed at the national levels. There are private organizations that drive a lot of these intentional changes to shift that gap. But if you could share any other thing or help validate if some of these things are helpful to, I would say, tilting that balance.
In my experience, I think one of the important aspects is letting, and I know we're going back to education, but really letting young girls know what is possible. I've been a part of a number of forums and outreach programs and working with young girls, and repeatedly the most common sentiment is, I never knew that type of career existed, or I never knew that I could develop those skills, or I never knew that I would be able to turn something like this into a job. And so I think that one of the key things is is definitely having those role models and really highlighting women who have paved these paths, so that the young girls who are trying to understand what they can do with their skills, or really being able to relate to something that they can really enjoy doing, is being able to share with them what is possible, what they can enter into when they leave school, or what they can work independently with via access to the internet. So for example, there is a wonderful program that's called SheTech Technovation, and it really focuses on elementary and high school students who are girls to develop an idea using technology that will assist their local community. And through this program, they get access to mentors from all over the world who look at these ideas that they've developed, whether it be something that they've coded up or they have mocked up using technology. And then they get guidance and help from people who have delivered similar technologies on a large scale across the world. And it gives them motivation, it gives them something to strive for, and it also gives them the tools that they need to work towards developing something like this.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, just adding to what Tabitha said, and maybe we're going to pick the same one of the things you identified, which is access to STEM education, and also having role models. I know that I also got interested in pursuing an engineering career in high school, where I had a great female physics teacher and also a female lab technician working with her and encouraging me all the way that it was all right to be great at physics. And I decided I really did not like biology. And so where in my day, for young women who were good in the sciences, a career in medicine was what everyone advocated. I felt, and I had the encouragement to pursue an engineering career. I had to convince my dad, and really that my mom was okay, but my dad took some convincing that indeed it was okay for me to pursue an engineering career, and thus started my journey. But I mean, I also today try to encourage, but one of the things I recognize is the power of having role models and the power of having young girls gain access to the diversity of career paths available in engineering and the opportunities that that affords them. And yes, that women could lead in engineering. I love that engineering has what I would call deterministic outputs. So your work, especially, you mentioned issues of self-esteem and role modeling and dealing with emotional issues. And for a lot of women, I said, you know, when you deliver code, it either runs or it doesn't run, or you come up with an application, or you have a project and you have to build something. And so it takes a lot of subjectivity out of your outputs as a professional if you are pursuing an engineering career. And so I think it levels the playing field a little bit, to be honest. Yes, probably a lot of hard work. You may not get as many breaks, but you know that if you put in the work, you will get the results and you will get the outcomes. So I think for exposing young women, young girls early, one, to having the education, so they have the skills to pursue the career, and two, having role models who say, who kind of validate for them that being good in math, being good in physics, pursuing a career in engineering does not limit your femininity, and you can be whatever you want to be, I think is really important.
Thank you, thank you. I think just before you started speaking on it, still I think everyone was interested in hearing your career journey, and you've just highlighted that. Thank you so much for that. Thank you very much. In trying to close out, I think it would be fair to say, so a lot of this has to do with, I would say, inside out, what organizations have to do, what people have to do by themselves. But from a point of, what can each individual do? One of the areas I think is helpful is, I would call it, tuning into every drive to promote women empowerment when it comes to technology. So if it means teaching what you know, if it means training a set of people that are just new entrants into a certain field, for example, if it means learning certain areas that would need to be impacted on others, for example, like STEM, a lot of people would be shocked. They do have the knowledge to learn and teach STEM to people that are that don't have those same opportunities. So if it means introducing that to people around, I think those are some of the areas where, each of us can be intentional about it. So thank you so much for bringing in your contributions. Thank you so much. I think lots of people will find this very helpful as they go through their silent battles or silent struggles in all of this. So thank you so much, Funke, and thank you so much, Tabitha, for this time.